Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wang is the best novel that I have read this year. It's a book that blends the dark academia genre into a fantasy setting and provides us with themes, characters, and events that expose the darkness of colonialism and capitalism. It is the single most powerful thing I have read in a long time. It is vital reading for fans of R.F. Kuang's Babel. It made me scream. It made me cry. It tore me to pieces. I am not okay, but I forgive it for that. And I need to talk about it. Blood Over Bright Haven has been getting a lot of hype recently, and it is absolutely deserved. This is a faultless dark academia fantasy novel. It pulls no punches. It is unforgiving and unforgivable in just how raw and angry it is. This is a novel with teeth and claws. It is fierce, it is loud, it is furious, and it is an absolute masterpiece. In order to talk about exactly why this book is so powerful, I do feel the need to veer into spoiler territory. The book isn't divided into any specific acts, but it kind of has a loose 5-act structure, I would say. And I will not spoil the final act, I will not spoil the ending, but I do want to give away one particular big twist event that happens around halfway through. When I get to that, I will warn you. I'll put up a big spoiler warning. Until then, you are safe. I won't give away anything that isn't alluded to in the blurb. When we get to the spoiler section, keep watching or tune out, that's your choice. Now let's dig into what I'm sure will be my favourite book of this entire year, Blood Over Bright Haven. The novel is almost entirely set in a city called Tehran. Tehran is a post-industrial city that gives kind of steampunky vibes. The electricity that powers its buildings, powers its industry and its infrastructure is all created by magic, as is an enormous barrier that permanently exists over the entire city like a dome. The barrier keeps out something called the Blight. And the novel opens with a tribe of people who live outside the city, and they are running from the Blight. The Blight is a strange and mysterious phenomenon that behaves like a lightning strike which appears out of thin air. If it appears close enough to touch you, it pulls you apart. The novel's opening chapter describes a small group of people running towards the city, trying to outrun the Blight. Almost all of them are killed in the process, and the way that they die is horrific. This is what I mean when I say the book pulls no punches. It opens with a traumatizingly aggressive and intense opening chapter that honestly might make some people cry right from the get-go. These people are part of a tribe, and there are many tribes that exist in the land outside the city. And together, all of these tribes are called the Quen. And of course, very frequently, in order to escape the Blight, tribes of Quen will run toward the city and beg to be let in. That means that the city has a Quen quarter. They are the underclass of this city. They sweep the streets, they work the factories, they do all of the dangerous jobs. And one of our two protagonists is a Quen called Tomil. In the opening chapter, we see Tomil arrive at the city as one of only 2 survivors from his tribe. And that's it for Tomil for a little while. We don't know what happened to him after that moment. We then follow our main protagonist, who is our eyes and ears for about 90% of the novel, Siona. Siona is a young woman who dreams of being a high mage. Problem is, this is a very misogynistic society, and no woman has ever reached that rank before. For several years, she's been mentored by one of the great mages of the city, and he believes she can be the first woman to rise up through the glass ceiling and become a high mage. These mages are responsible for keeping the city going. Through magical inventions and advancements, they create new technologies and advance their industry and keep everybody safe. And she's very proud of her city, she's proud of magic, she's good at manipulating it. And in the first few chapters, we learn exactly how this magic system operates, and it's fascinating. You can see here on the cover, there's a kind of typewriter. These typewriters have windows attached to them, and on these typewriters, spells are created. And the window is a kind of portal into another realm. In fact, it is called the Other Realm, like in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. But the other realm isn't clear through the window. It's like looking at an X-ray or infrared. It's all grey and white, and you have to be able to manipulate what you're seeing in order to siphon energy from the other realm that gets turned into electricity and other forms of power. But though this city is run by magic scientists, it's also controlled by dogma and scripture. There are very strict religious beliefs and rules that govern everything within the city. And all of these rules relate to magic and the God-given right of the people in this city to do what they do, to have power, to manipulate whatever this other realm is, to siphon energy from it, to keep the Quen out, to have this dome over their city. It is their God-given right. They are God's chosen people. The Quen are not. They chose to live outside. They chose to risk their lives. And if they do choose to come inside, they should be grateful to be given anything at all. They're given jobs, they're given homes. That should be enough. They are already lesser people because they were not chosen by God. So the novel has a lot going on in terms of its world building. It is all meticulously thought out in terms of its dogma, in terms of its university setting, in terms of its magic system, its infrastructure, literally everything. M.L. Wang has created a perfect and complete world. The secret, I think, is that the world is small. It is a perfectly contained city. And so its politics, its religion, its infrastructure, its history, everything is fully thought out and fully explored. And through all of this, we can see so many obvious allegories related to racism, xenophobia, classism, religious persecution, and more. Now, of course, as the blurb gives away, Siona does make it. She becomes the first female High Mage. And upon earning that title and earning a lab in the university, she's given an assistant. But because this is a very misogynistic society, her assistant is a joke. It's Tommel, the Quen, who for the past 10 years has been living in the Quen Quarter and working as a janitor at the university. To be given an assistant who is a janitor and a Quen is an insult. It's a joke. And here is something that M.L. Wang really has to balance. And it's Siona as a character and her relationship to Tommel the Quen. See, Siona has to sympathize with Tommel to a point in order for their relationship to go anywhere and for all of this to work out. But there is such a real danger of turning Siona into a white savior, the one member of this city's higher class who actually sympathizes with the Quen, making her different from everyone else. And that's not really the case. If it was, it would feel lazy and cheesy and kind of uncomfortable. M.L. Wang does not do that. There is some sympathy that Siona feels, and you believe that sympathy because she herself, as a woman in a man's world, has struggled, and therefore she feels just enough of a kinship with Tommel to cut him a little bit more slack than the men do. But only a little bit. She still believes in the doctrine of this world. She still follows the religious rules. She still believes in magic. She still believes in this class system. She is fully entrenched in these beliefs, just like everybody else is. And that fact makes up so much of the conflict of this novel. She is not immediately sympathetic to the Quen. She's not different from everyone else. She's not special. She's not a white savior character at all. I was worried that she would be, but she's not, because M.L. Wang has written something far greater than that. Blood Over Brighthaven, as I said, is very obviously a novel about colonialism and capitalism, about industry. It is an eco-novel. You know that whatever the city is doing to siphon this magic energy and turn it into electricity, you know it must be something bad. you know it must be dark. We know that the main ways that we gain energy and use energy on a daily basis all around this world, we know it can't last. We know it is damaging to our environment. We know that we're ruining our home every time we switch on a light bulb. We all know this. And it's very obvious that in the novel, whatever the truth is about this magic has to come out. It has to be revealed, and some kind of change has to happen. You know from very early on in the novel, you can feel it in your bones as you're reading, that the events of this story are going to lead to some kind of paradigm shift. Things must change. Revolution might be possible, but we don't know what we're going to be revolting against, other than, of course, the mistreatment of the Quen people. But there are so many questions involving the Blight and the Other Realm and the Dome. The magic system is perfectly thought out, except for what exactly the source of the power is. Before I go into spoilers, I want to emphasize how well written this thing is, because it has an opening chapter that is so dramatic and heartbreaking in the way that the physical events are described. The visuals of the first chapter, the things that you see, the things you're exposed to, are absolutely harrowing and heartbreaking. And then we cut to a second chapter where we meet Siona. She's going to her exam with her cousin, and the dialogue between them is exceptionally well written. It is very, very dialogue heavy. The whole novel is. In fact, the book is so much just conversations. Most of it takes place in her lab. Most of the conversations are just between her and Tommel. It is an endless series of conversations where they discuss ethics, morality, religion, science, magic, etc. They are constantly talking and getting to know each other. And in that second chapter where we meet Siona and her cousin, you have so much beautiful, exciting, hilarious banter between them before things start to get a lot more serious. All of this fun banter gives way to sexism, the misogynistic reality of this place, and the way that Siona deals with it. We admire her, but as we go on and we get into her relationship with Tommel and the way that they talk to each other, we start to get annoyed at her because she is a member of an oppressed group, women, and yet she is guilty of treating another oppressed group, the Quen, like crap. To put it in our terms, in today's vernacular, she's a white feminist. And in order to make change, she has to learn that that's not right, it's not okay. It's a novel that has the confidence to create a very complex and unlikable protagonist. A woman who knows what it's like to be oppressed and deal with adversity, but who also believes in the doctrine that she grew up in and therefore is guilty of perpetuating the same lies, the same bigotry, the same inequality that is often thrust at her. And all of this is explored so perfectly, so eloquently, in a novel that is so rich in dialogue. The entire thing is like a play. It is so heavy in its conversational elements, and it is remarkable. M.L. Wang has created a small cast of very intensely well-realized characters who do little but talk, and also take action when action is necessary. And now we come to the spoiler part. If you don't want to know what exactly she discovers in order to change everything, in order to shift this paradigm, stop watching now and please go and pick up a copy of Blood over Bright Haven. This novel is perfect. It is remarkable. It is a sensation. But if you're still here now, get ready for a spoiler for the second half of the novel. But again, I'm not going to spoil the ending. I'm not spoiling the final act. I just need to talk about what is discovered and the true reality of this world. The blurb tells us that something is going to happen. She and Tommel will discover something that will change their understanding of the truth of their world. As they're working together in her lab, Siona and Tommel tweak the machine that allows them to see this other realm. She finds a way, with Tommel's help, to turn it from black and white into colour, to see the other realm truly for what it really is. And what it is their world. It is everything outside the city. See, when mages are taught how to siphon from the other realm, they're given a map of that realm, and there are areas that they cannot touch. There's this one massive area that they cannot siphon from. They must not touch it when they are mapping and choosing where to pull the energy from. And it's because that one area is in fact the city. There is no other realm. They are just siphoning energy from the world outside the city. And that's what the blight is. These weird lightning strikes that just appear at random and kill people who come near them, they are moments where energy is being siphoned by the mages inside the city. There is no other realm. And when they first update these machines and look through the window and see just a random field with a bush in it, and hit the keys to do a bit of siphoning, the blight appears in front of their eyes. Siona doesn't know what she's looking at because she's never seen the blight, but Tommel screams and runs away. He becomes completely frantic and has a panic attack because he realizes in that moment the truth of it all. Every single time the blight has ever appeared, it was caused by a mage. His family, his tribe, his friends, everybody he's ever known who has died at the hands of the blight was actually killed by people inside the city. His sister and her husband died at the beginning of the novel. They died so that someone could heat their kettle. They died so that a train could go from A to B. They died for a light bulb. That's the truth of it. And the novel becomes so much more exciting and interesting when this happens because Siona has to deal with that, and she will not accept it for a long, long time. She argues and screams. Tommel tries to explain to her what's really happening. He can see it very plainly. He knows exactly what's been going on. It all clicks for him in that moment when he sees it through the window because he can put all of this together in his head in an instant. Of course he can. She won't accept it. She can't, not just because she hasn't seen what he's seen and lived the life that he's lived, but also because of the religious indoctrination that has happened to her from day one. The fact that she is a member of God's chosen people, that the mages that built the city hundreds of years ago, they would not have done this. Surely not. They would not peddle these lies. They would not cover up this truth. They must have been ignorant to it in some way. But because this author has created such a solid foundation, such immaculate history and world building, it is all perfectly thought through. Many, many years ago, there was a terrorist who had to be executed by the High Mages for treason. It was reported and written that this man discovered some form of dark magic that he used to kill other mages, but there's got to be more to him than meets the eye. There's more to this history. And Siona has to make a very difficult decision, and she doesn't come to it immediately, and she doesn't come to it all at once, but rather in very, very disjointed and difficult tiny little steps along the way as she finds the strength to admit the truth. As she comes to find all of this out, she has to deal with the reality of her world and how none of it is true, and then she has to decide what to do with that. But along the way, she and Tommel will fight and argue. They will scream and cry. They will hate each other. She will not accept this truth. And the way that this is all explored is incredible. What strikes me as the most impressive thing about Blood Over Bright Haven is the way that it explores multiple themes about religious indoctrination and dogmatic truth, and also so many different forms of bigotry, classism, xenophobia, racism, sexism, etc., as well as industry and capitalism, and colonialism most of all. It covers all of these different themes, and they overlap with each other so perfectly, but it all makes so much sense. Throughout the history of Western civilization, the Christian church has been used as an excuse for so many colonialist crimes. The narrative that Native Americans of North and South America were inhuman, were barbarians, were uncivilized, ungodly creatures, but God's chosen people of Europe went over and invaded and killed and spread disease and massacred people. And it was all okay because they were God's chosen. You can see the parallels between that and this novel. It's very obvious. But the fact that the novel is set in this industrial city really brings that home even more, because the colonialist crimes that were committed by Britain, France, Spain, the Netherlands, Portugal, they all led to the Industrial Revolution. A revolution that was built off the backs of slaves. A revolution that was funded by slave labor and slave trading. And while there is no slave trade in this book, the Quen are an underclass group of people who do all of the menial labor and live in poverty in the city, in an isolated quarter of their own. It is all so immaculately done. The overlap of religious indoctrination, of industry, and of colonialism, patriarchy, racism, xenophobia, all of it. It all overlaps so neatly in this novel and all works so well as one enormous allegory for the legacy of European capitalist colonialism over the past 500 years. I am staggered by this novel's power to do all of that. And all the while writing very, very real characters who are not wholly good paragons of futurism and brightness, and creating a magic system that is so well thought through and has just enough mystery and intrigue to create an enormous plot twist at the halfway point. The city, the world outside, the beliefs of the Quen people, their tribal traditions, the traditions of the city, the religious texts that are also scientific texts that created the industry of this world, it's all perfectly explored and thought out. I am staggered. I am in awe, and I cried so many times throughout this book as revelations take place, as people get hurt, and at the end, I cried again. Of course I cried at how this book ends. It is a standalone, self-contained work of dark academic fantasy, and it is the best thing I've read this year. I could talk about this book for hours and hours and hours. This is one of the longest videos that I've made in a while because I cannot stop talking about the sheer gravity and power, the immaculate nature of this novel. Blood over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang is perfect. It is my favourite book of 2024, and I will never forget my experience reading it. Please, please check it out. And if you've enjoyed this video, if you thought this was a good review, if I've convinced you, please consider supporting me and becoming a patron. I would really, really, really appreciate your support. This channel would disappear tomorrow if I lost my Patreon support. Ad revenue is not enough. Believe me. So if you enjoyed this, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you, and subscribe for books.